You are listening to the Iser Health Podcast with your host, Dr. Josh Gilden.
Disclaimer. The information discussed in this podcast is for educational and informational purposes only. Always consult with a qualified healthcare provider regarding a medical condition or treatment. The views expressed by the guests and hosts are their own and do not necessarily reflect those of any affiliated institutions.
Mr. Chezkel Jacobowitz is here with us. Famed speech therapist at Iser Health. I'm excited about this episode, and I'll tell you why I'm excited about this episode. I'm excited about this episode twofold. First, we've done a couple of these filmings already, and fascinating guests. Love to listen to them. But we've not had a true community member who works with us who can give a little bit of a different perspective. So this is a real nice opportunity for us. Also, when it comes to vision, pain management, somewhat with teeth, but it didn't perfectly overlap with Dr. Seamus because I don't know anything about orthodontics per se. This is one of the episodes where I get to come in as a blank slate. I don't have any preconceived notions about speech therapy because even in emergency medicine where we get to do a bunch of stuff and get to touch a bunch of fields, I've never made a diagnosis regarding speech therapy in the emergency department or even in urgent care. And this is an opportunity for me to learn more about the field. So welcome to the Iser Health Podcast.
Welcome to.
The first question I have is, I don't believe speech therapy is a common pathway for someone within the community here. So I am very curious how you came about learning about speech therapy and why you decided to pursue that as a career pathway.
I was working in one of the schools here in Kiryas for 12 years. It was the first diagnosed student in the school with leukemia. The mother was working with me in the administration office. I was the only male worker. She was the only lady. And I was offering her to volunteer in the hospital to go for stays at night. I became involved. At the end, I took over the entire case, the entire family, the support for the school, making schedule the volunteers to go. At the end, I find myself working in Colombia for 6 months with my laptop day and night, volunteering for this child. When he became healed, Baruch Hashem, I became involved and I was volunteering for 6 years for Chai Lifeline, Yedidim, Mekimi, Hands-On, and Bekecholam. It built in me a passion and empathy for children who are struggling and for the families too. I was volunteering to stay in hospitals for night shifts and to go in homes. It came to a point where I felt as a school worker, as a school employee, there's a limit how much you can grow. I decided to jump into the field of helping children and families who are struggling. There was 3 parents from the school where I was working who had children with hearing aids. And they pushed me that there is no Yiddish-speaking therapist from within the community who understand our needs, who speaks our language. And if I'm going to jump into this field, it will be a huge plus for the community.
Did you have a role model? Because if there was no one for anyone to go to at that point, how did you, for me, it was easy. I had a bunch of ways to envision my pathway just from the community I come from. It's not an uncommon pathway. But for you, did you have any role model to look up to, or were you navigating new terrain and new waters?
Zero role model. After the conversations with that parents, I came into the shul. I saw a little tiny advertisement for college credits, somebody who wants to go into the field of accounting or special ed. I called them up. At that point, my English was like a Satmar boy, very, very limited. I didn't believe I will be able to sign up and to become accepted. Hashem made me blind. I should know what I'm going into. If I will know before, I will never jump into 6 years of schooling like jail, like sitting in a tvisa, no family events, no weddings, no parties, no country, no vacations, Yom Tovim holidays, the minimum, but they don't understand Tisha B'Av and Shana Rabbah, why you can't come into class, why you can't take the exam, why you're asking for exception, for extension. They don't understand it. They don't get it. Chalamoid. So I had to keep my job in the school, to be able to bring home Chalas and Wein for Shabbos. It took 6 years. And keeping a full-time job plus having a family, a Hasidic man, Torah mitzvahs, plus schooling, it was tough. It came more than one time that I felt like I'm going to step back, but I was already so into the program that in New York State, there's no speech assistance. Or you make it till the end, you become a licensed speech therapist. There are no, like in OT, there's a OTA, OT assistance, PTA in speech. In New York State, they don't allow the assistance. Or you go till the end of the program, or you drop out.
Where did you draw motivation from to keep going at that point?
As a father of children, working in the school, being so close connected to children, I saw the wonder in the science of speech, how children are developing speech. Really what drove me, when I was a teenager, there was not, as a teenager, even back when I was a young child in the school, there was a starter in my class. And I always felt for him, not only for him, but for the other 2-3 children in our grade. At that time in Brooklyn, in Trop Avenue, in Williamsburg, Satmar was 250 students per grade. And there was always 2-3 starters in each grade. And I always felt for them, not only for stuttering, every special need child, but special stuttering. Especially when I was in Yeshiva Gedola, I always felt for them and I tried to help them. They felt that I understand them. I don't know why. They felt that I understand them. So being a father of children and seeing how they're developing speech and how they're growing, struggling, fluctuating, recovering, healing, plus working in the school, both together, it brought me to jump into speech.
So I remember when I was probably in high school or college, my father put a sign in my room, and it was in Hebrew, and it said, Ein breira chayav lamshich. It just said, and I'm pretty sure the translation, I hope I'm getting it right. Someone will correct me if I'm wrong. Essentially, you have no choice. You have to keep going, right? Because I think for all these journeys, you just have to dig in your heel and decide you're going to keep going, because most of the common sense in one's brain says, stop right now. This is not going to end well, or even if it does end well, the amount of effort and pain that's going to go into the process. Specifically, you mentioned family events, Jewish holidays. Those are all, obviously on my journey, which is very different than yours. Those are the first parts of the sacrificial lamb, so to speak, of you have to figure out how to work around, request time off, request some form of a substitution, right? If you can't make it on this day, can you do it on that day, even if that means you're getting the work in earlier? And it's all very painful, especially when you're talking about missing family events. So that's why I was interested in how you stay motivated with that, because it's definitely, I imagine it's different for everyone, but especially with your unique background, I find that pretty fascinating. We're specifically, I guess a couple of questions. The first question is, how long in general is the speech therapy pathway on average for someone, and where did you do your training?
Just to respond on what you said, I remember now I had to go for new hire orientation, which was mandatory before I started my online program. By the way, it was in Nova, Southeastern University in Fort Lauderdale, Florida.
Right, that's a joke, right?
Why is it a joke?
That's where I went to school. I went to osteopathic medical school at Nova Southeastern University.
Oh, I didn't know.
College of Osteopathic Medicine.
I didn't know. So I took my BA through TTI in Brooklyn. And for the master's, I went for online program through Nova. So I had to go down.
Fellow Shark alumni over here.
Yes.
There you go. Okay.
The Sharks, the Sharks. We were a group of 50 students. 2 males from the entire group, only 2 men. And before starting, they went through all the students to introduce themselves, to stand up and to say who they are, some words. And I remember there was one woman for whom they were clapping. She was right after birth, and the fact that she was coming, and, you know, she gave away her family needs, they were clapping. And then when it came to me, I was in the back because of tzenius. I didn't want to sit between them, so they assigned me a special place in the corner in the end. So I was almost at the end, and I told who I am and what brought me in order to fulfill the hole in the community, to have someone who talks Yiddish to fill in the hole. They were clapping, and I didn't even realize at that time what a Kiddush Hashem I made. It didn't went into their brain that you jumped into to become a speech therapist just to fulfill the needs of your community. I didn't even realize what it means.
Wow. How did that affect you when did you realize, I imagine it wasn't right away. When did you realize that what you thought was a straightforward thing that a need that you needed to fill was probably more than that? And, you know, once again, I don't want to, it's not to inflate anyone's ego or to make you feel bigger than, I'm sure, you know, the respect that you deserve for the work that you do. But, you know, at some point, everyone has to appreciate the work that they're doing and the level of it. Is it when you were sitting there that you realized it, or are you still trying to figure it out now, the impact that you're having on the community?
While I was learning, I think Hashem made me blind. I shouldn't know what comes, because if I will know, I will never go in. By the time I started to practice, until I started, I didn't even believe the impact I'm going to make on humans' life. What it means, every 30 days, you're changing the life of someone to make it better. It's the feeling, the satisfaction is what it can't be explained. When you see in front of your eyes the success, the fruit of your work, you took a person who was unable to speak, to swallow, to talk, and you make it happen. It's a feeling that can't be explained.
On this running theme of you were blind to the pathway when you were taking it, what was maybe twofold question, the biggest cultural barrier that you expected, and maybe perhaps the biggest cultural barrier you had not expected but ended up becoming a barrier in your process?
When I started, I was asking if it's worth to go into this field because nobody's opening a speech practice in Kiryas Joel. So if it's a village that is already established for 40, 50 years, and nobody's opening, that means it's not worth, there's no need. So why should I go into this field? And plus, if I'm from within the community, I don't want to talk about the halacha part of going to college. I feel it doesn't belong to be addressed here. Of course, I had my rabbunim and my dayunim who guided me, who helped me, and it doesn't belong on public. But the second part, I was worried if I'm from within the community, if people will trust me, that I should know, shalom bias, chinuch, family conflicts, and happenings at home. You become so connected and become so involved. So why should they want to come to me? If they don't want, I should know that the child has this deficit, the spouse is struggling with this, they will not trust me. But right when I started to practice and I got so much feedback, and I found the opposite. They feel so much trust and they appreciate, even as a beginner, the fact that you are from the community. You can connect with my child, with my teenager, much more than anybody because you speak the same language, you understand the culture. Oh, I was blown away, like, whoa, like I didn't expect they should trust and appreciate so much. I think this is what drove me and what brought me so much motivation, beside of the fruits and the improvements that I saw. But personally, I didn't expect so much respect and trust.
So that's always something that resonates with me, and I've said this multiple times on this podcast even, which is no one cares how much you know until they know how much you care. Hard stop. And that's part of the purpose of what we're doing here, right? Is I want people to understand how much we care, because otherwise, in today's day and age, with the level of information that's out there, you have a specific opinion, you want to find evidence to back it, you can find that in probably about 5 seconds, as long as it takes you to type it in, right? So I don't believe that the way healthcare will be done is based purely on what the evidence is. It's about how the people who understand the evidence or are performing that practice of medicine, how they're able to connect with their clients and their patients and gain their trust. It's very much back to the old practice of the family doctor coming to your house, and that was your makubal, that was the individual you trusted for your medical care because they were who you trusted. At the end of the day, if you don't trust the person taking care of you, it doesn't matter what they are saying. You don't need to take that with, you'll take it with a grain of salt, and it doesn't necessarily need to be valid based off of your personal preferences and opinions. So you have to trust the practitioner who's taking care. And in your particular example, right, they knew you, they're familiar with you, they understand how much you care. So it would resonate with them when you're trying to take care of them, that they would come to you ultimately, even if for you it doesn't make sense at the time per se. With regards to the schooling, and this is something that I'm truly interested in, go ahead.
Just to add to your comment, talking about trust and about having someone from the community, speech, I think, is the only in the field, in the health field, where even there is evidence-based practice and it must be peer-reviewed and research-based, speech is something that you can't follow just assessment scores, just take a sheet and score pass-fail screening. It all depends on the clinician, and the provider, and the therapist to judge based on the community where you are, the language and the accent and dialect they are talking, to make a clinical assessment, to make a diagnosis. Believe it or not, even I'm from within the community here, I must work very, very hard to be updated with the politics and the happenings in New Square, Belz, Vignitz, Klosenberg, Poppa, Blumenberg. Blumengrove is next to us, the same school, the same communities. Blumengrove, Gibbers, Chemischelek, Cheskel, Sotfausburg School, even from Canada here and there, but mostly from the Catskills, from the entire upstate, because they have no services there and they're coming here to KJ. So when it comes to speech, I must connect with them. So I don't say, hey, I say hi. I don't say Zion. We say here Zoyan. I don't wear a hoiche biberet, but a flat flacha. I must connect with them, and I must understand the culture and the needs and the language of that community to be able to treat the child fairly.
So, and to that point, and I've said this before, I'll probably at some point just sound like I'm on a loop recorder where I say the same things throughout some episodes, but I say the things that I think are very valuable, which is, what is evidence-based medicine, right? And I think if you take anything to the extreme, then it no longer falls in this category, right? So it's taking the evidence. You have to understand what the literature is, certainly to some significant extent. You have to take your personal practice experience into account. It's a trifecta. It's 3 parts. And you have to take into account the patient values, right? Because any time you practice medicine, or even in your case therapy, and you're not taking into account someone's value system, you're not going to have a client or a patient for much longer, right? So specifically sensitivities that exist in this community, right? If you're going to violate someone's sensitivities, it doesn't matter how good of a therapist you are, they're not going to come see you again. At the other extreme, if someone's purely anecdotal, I've had success and they, once again, they don't really know the underlying evidence behind what they're doing. There's a lacking there as well, for sure, right? So, and then to the other extreme, if someone's only customer service centric, right? They're only what makes you happy, but is not necessarily what's best for you or what the evidence shows. We all know that that's a very big fad in today's world as medicine exists, but it's also clearly not the way to take care of people. So the way you frame that is really perfectly. It's within those three components that you're trying to look to get the right mixture, right? The right baking. I'm not a baker, so I shouldn't do a baking or cooking example. I apologize ahead of time. We're not doing it. But yeah, you need to figure out the right recipe for each individual patient. Something that happens in medical school is you start to learn about all these medical diseases and immediately self-diagnose 1,000 diseases that one does not have, right? You start learning about them, you start reflecting on yourself, and you say, oh, I think I have that, right? I'm just curious because we're all speaking, right? So did you have a similar, especially with, as you said, go ahead.
Just to add, we are both licensed clinicians, just to advocate for our field about having license and working evidence-based. I do remember in one of my classes, I was participating for 3 months in the course. At the end, I asked the instructor, okay, so going home, I'm starting to see patients from all this blah blah that you teach us. So how do I know which tool to use, which treatment to say? I don't know, down to earth, tachlis, what I'm going to do. So I remember he replied, you just go out, you just start, you will figure out, you will find. Later I realized how true it was, because it can be said, for a Reich, use this, for a Shin, use this, for stuttering, for swallowing, for language. It all depends on the community and the language and the needs of the client. I will just finish with giving an example of COVID. When I went out of school after 6 years, I felt like 90% of this stuff I will never use in my life. There's only once in 100 years that happens like a pandemic of COVID, and then you need to go back to your school stuff, and you take out of the 90% that you never used in your life, and now it's relevant to you, and you can't work without this. Speech, you can look, it's like, okay, if you messed up, you will fix the sound, you will fix the concept and language, but you can't kill a person, you can't damage. First, yes, you can damage mentally, special stuttering, and social skills, communication. It may affect marriage, having chassan, other stuff. But when it comes to swallowing, it's like you're taking a knife, you can make it, you can break it. You can give a little tiny of water for a person, you can get ammonia, and you can kill the person. So talking about evidence-based, being licensed, and having trust and experience, yeah, COVID can hit, and you must judge by your own, based on SPAT. You can't even look back. You can look how to deal with COVID, something that happened under your time.
To that point, the experiential nature of growth in practicing medicine, therapy, probably can't be overstated, right? I think everyone starts off with some degree of imposter syndrome, right? Because you are either in the education or you're post-grad, and now you have the degree, and people are expecting you to be seasoned, expert, and you're still gaining knowledge. That's why it's a practice, right? It's not a perfect, it's a practice. And it definitely, if one discounts the impact that has, it's daunting on the front end, right? Meaning you come out and you assume you should have all that experience, and it's an unfair expectation of oneself, because you have to go out and practice to get the experience. But then you also have to use that practice and what you've learned and refine it in order to hone your craft and hone your expertise, right? So it's one thing to just see patients, but you have to learn from the patients you see, right? That's how you continue your learning experience, and how you make sure that you've crafted your skill so that you're different 5 years from year 1, you're different year 10 than year 5, and so on and so forth. The second you stop doing that, or one stops doing that, that's obviously dangerous. You start to fall into rote pattern, and the question is the heart still in the game at that point in time? Another thing is, and I'm reminded of Maslow's hammer. I don't know if you've heard of this, but Maslow's hammer, and I'm going to say it as eloquently, as good as I possibly can. Essentially, you give someone a hammer, all of a sudden everything becomes a nail, right? You start to solve every problem the same way. And I think it's the experiential nature of practicing for an extended period of time, 1 year, 5 years, 10 years. All of a sudden, you start to understand, oh, this is a Phillips. This is a flathead. And once again, I shouldn't be doing the tools example, because I'm not the tool guy. That's a guarantee. Just as much as I'm not the baker, I'm not the cooker, I'm not the tool guy. But in general, that there are different ways to treat specific problems, and that does require the time of, sitting down, learning from your patients, and learning how to do it maybe differently the next time.
Talking about experience, trust, my biggest challenges and my surprises from when I started till I was in, I would say, as you know, as an employee here in the center, the philosophy of the health center when hiring, when they are interviewing, if they look more on experience or more on personality, you know the answer. Yeah, they always look on personality. Why? Experience, you can learn, you can practice. I'm not worried about it. Personality, if you don't have metas. So I do remember when I started, I didn't believe people were willing to give a chance because you are from the community, and the fact that you are an insider and you are so Hamish, I would rather prefer you over another one with more experience than you. So this shows that people are looking of your sensitivity, of your empathy, of your personality, and being able to connect with the client and to understand the needs more than the experience. Especially in this community, when I say this, I don't mean KJ, but the Hasidic community, when it comes to choose a doctor, they feel like the clinicians, who are in the medical field, the health allied, they look down at them. Now you're Hasidic, you're fanatic, you don't know too much, you're not so educated, so we can do with you whatever we want. This is what the people are feeling, just a feeling. The people community, they say, no, we not let ourselves to be used, for trials and for just chickens. We will do our research. We will Google. We will call it for a helpline, Chaim Medical, Echo. We will do our work. We're not willing or ready to go to anyone. This is the attitude they are giving. In fact, I was surprised that they were willing to give me a chance at the beginning because I'm from the community and I'm adapting myself to the needs of the client. And to be culturally based and sensitive to the needs.
I think sometimes we overrate the fact that there are people smarter than us. There's someone who's more fit to be in this chair than me. There's someone who's more fit to be in that chair than you. But what it comes down to is fit, right? But what is the correct fit for this time at this moment? And the rest, for a better example is, or another example I should say, is my daughter is doing math right now. And she came home the other day. She's not going to listen to this, so I can say whatever I need to say. But she came home and she thought she was the worst in the class at math. And what I want to do is I want to sit down with her. I want to show her a graph of two different, X and Y charts. All right. So I'm doing my best to remember how this math works, right? But she's in. Yeah, go ahead.
I hope you're not going to go into algebra.
No,
because the day after the exam in school, I pressed delete, reset, and I left everything there.
No, I don't even know what kind of math this is. So I just know that I learned it at one point, and it still resonates right now. But in essence, it's just rate over rise. That's a slope, right? I think it's the amount of change over a period of time. So you have two people. You have someone who, these are the geniuses. They just shoot up like an arrow. And at some point, they can kind of peter out because they feel really comfortable with what they know. But they're naturals, so they get up there much quicker. And then you have other people, and this is where gumption or passion, effort, this is where it comes into play. As long as they're willing to stick with it, even though they start out much lower. And if you look at the same, so this is someone who's naturally inclined. I don't know if I'm in frame. Yochi's going to help. Great. But this is someone who's naturally inclined. You just see that they shoot up like an arrow, right? They just understand everything. They get it quickly. At some point, some of them just peter off because they're very comfortable with their knowledge, right? And this is someone who's just working hard. So if you get to this point in time and this point in time, it might look like that person's up there and this person's only down here. This is life, right? So life is a video. It's not a clip. It's not a short, and it's not a photo, right? So it's the person who just keeps trying, right? Even if they're not naturally inclined, they're able to make it up here, and they're able to surpass the one with natural abilities and natural talents. And that's really, I don't know that she's learned this math yet, so it might not resonate. I might have to give it another year or two. But I think that's kind of what we're talking about here as well, which is you don't have to be the most naturally skilled speech therapist, but you have to have the one who has a drive, has the passion to continue learning, right? And ultimately, that will put you in a position to help the most people. The Yeush, right? Yeush is giving up, right? Just feeling like you can't succeed and there's no reason to go on. It's a debilitating, it's an incapacitating feeling. So you just have to, like you said, put the blinders on, right? You just have to, this is what I have to do for right now, and this is how I get to the next step. And eventually, that rate overrides, right? You'll be able to surpass where other people are.
In my words, to be flexible, to adapt yourself to the needs of the clients depends on the time and the place and the person. As I said, people are asking, what is your biggest challenge in your job in every day? I always say it's 2 challenges. 9 o'clock in the evening, the teenager or the younger man after work who comes in the evening, they don't want to come during the day, during school, during work. I must be the same enthusiastic and fresh and energized, the same as the client who comes 9 o'clock in the morning, because this is schuldig as komt 9 by nacht. He wants to see me the same fresh, and you want to get the same quality. The other biggest challenge is every 30 minutes, a different age, gender, and severity. I must adapt myself every 30 minutes from sitting on the floor and playing with a preschool child with menches and karelach. Right after can walk in a post-stroke person, and I must calm myself with respect and slowly to calm down. Right after can come in a younger teenager, whom I must make engaged and excited. And right after can walk in a rabbi, a magachir, a dayan, from stuttering to voice, from voice to swelling, from swelling to social skills, from social skills to articulation, from articulation to nursing feeding mothers, from nursing feeding mothers to post-stroke. It's like every 30 minutes to adapt myself to different age, gender, and severity. I remember one time a mother came back after the first session with the Kita Dalit boy, grade 4. My child felt last time you spoke to him a little babyish. You made him feel like a little. So I explained for mom, you chose the session to come 3:30 right after school, right after the preschoolers are coming home. 5 o'clock, it's too late for the preschoolers. So 2:30 to 4 is when the preschoolers are coming, before they're becoming tired. So you chose right after 2-3 little preschool children. After sitting on the floor with menches and karelach and yelling and making them excited. And right after you walk in with your Ketadalit boy, it takes me time to adapt myself, to a Ketadalit, to switch over from preschool to Ketadalit. From borderen and schreien and machen fun and zeggen, wow, yay. Now I must act like, whoa, you are a big boy, hello, and what do you want to do today? So it comes back to being flexible, to adapt yourself to the needs.
I love that story because it also, it translates across multiple medical fields, right? It's no different for me who, when I'm going to be working late tonight even, that late evening patient that I'm going to see, I have to treat like the 9 a.m. patient when I'm fresh, right? Because that's essentially what healthcare demands of healthcare practitioners. And I think it's a fair expectation because it's a universal truth that we'd all want that level of care. And that's kind of what we deserve in healthcare. And I don't use the word deserve often, but I think that's a deserved right that one has. And the second thing is, the versatility, right? Like there's no one size fits all here. You have to act with each patient in a very different fashion. And it resonates in emergency medicine because I have a similar workflow where I could be seeing a 70-year-old patient or I could be seeing a 2-month-old. And you can't evaluate both those patients the same way, right? I do have a great joke that I utilize frequently, which I will say now maybe gives it away, but whenever I see like a 4-year-old and I have to give antibiotics, and if there's a tati in the room, whoever it is, I always like before have a great encounter. I evaluate the child. I let them know what's going on, the treatment pathway. Before it's over, I always look at them and say, he can swallow pills, right? As deadpan and as serious as possible. So the fear that, but it's just an entertainment value. And I know the child can't swallow pills. The child's not getting pills. We're going to do liquid, but you have to keep it fresh too. You have to have some levity, have some, especially if it's a little bit, if the child's not feeling well, humor is a good medicine, maybe the best medicine. So that's what I try and introduce. There is, I just want to get back to, go ahead.
By the way, when they come in, this is not a rehab, this is not a therapy room. By the children, it's being called a fun cheder.
A what?
Fun school.
Fun cheder. Oh, fun cheder.
Sunday with the girls, it's a fun school.
Right.
And for the boys, it's a fun cheder. So when they walk in, I always ask them, did you ever went to a fun school? Do you know how a fun school looks like? Do you think I'm a regular rabbi? I don't have a chemisch, a gemure, ich kann stecken, zu schlagen, zu schmeißen. This is let me show you how it looks at fun school. Are you ready for fun?
Yeah.
No? You didn't come for fun? Then go home. Then why are you here? Speech, what means speech? It's a nash, it's a candy, it's a vesh, it's a toy. What? Yeah, with humor you can heal. And then I decided, I found why therapy must be a punish, when it can be a fun.
I love that. When I was in medical school, I was self-diagnosing myself all the time. Thank God. I was a terrible diagnostician, and all those were wrong, or at least I think they were. I never got them checked out officially. But it's the same thing happened, especially coming from your background when you were in speech. All of a sudden, they would say something, and be like, "Oh my gosh, I had that too." Like, how was your personal process in learning, and how did you work on yourself? How were you your own speech therapist at that point?
So definitely, in order to treat patients and to teach them, I must be a nur Deutsch and a nur Mekayim. I must practice by myself whatever I want to give over for them. I think it can be said when I was a teenager, I was from the fast talkers in the yeshiva. One year I was working in the city, back in 15 years ago. We were praying Shachris on the bus. I was the Baltfil of the bus. I don't want to say...
I've heard you before, by the way. You're very good. Way more fluent than I am, just to be clear.
Thank you for the feedback. I don't want to say on the mic, because it's going to be recorded, published. You don't want to hear, and you wouldn't believe how long it took the Tfilah Shacharis from Hoidi to Olaini. I mean, Rahman al-Islam. But this was the norms on the Monroe bus on the way to Manhattan to Brooklyn. We had to be finished by Manhattan because most of the passengers went down to Brooklyn. I went till Williamsburg. Rahman al-Islam. I had to do tshiva on that. But Mincha Yom Kippur...
I'm assuming it wasn't too slow. That wasn't the problem.
No. Mincha Yom Kippur, I'm the Baltfil in my show. Oh. When we need to quickly. I can talk fast, like the fastest possible, if I want. I had to calm down, I had to change myself. Number one, educational purpose, just to make the podcast more informative. Average of a person, adult, will talk 150 words per minute. This is the average. A teenager, I see you become interested, you make yourself ready. This is why I decided to bring it in, even if it's just an interview on what speech is about, but I believe people will appreciate it to know it, the facts and the numbers. A teenager in Mesifta here on Badutchev Road in the Shiva Gedola will talk 175, 180 words per minute. 70% of them.
How do you clock that? Is that something?
Yes, more than once. I made tons of studies, hundreds of Bukhara. We have from grade 1 up to adults. I myself, I made survey studies. I collected data from each and every age, how much they're talking per minute when it comes to Kriya, to Ivra, to reading and talking. I'm not going to go into the little children, it's not relative now. But a teenager will talk 175, 180 words per minute. 3 to 8% will talk 200 words per minute, which is the max. The Vilna Goan or ich habe jetzt einmal gesagt, ich meine, der Vilna Goan, ein Mensch kann keinem sein 200 Mitzvahs in a minute. Favos. For the fastest was a Mensch can read, the fastest that a person can speak is 200 words per minute. So if you learn, you get 200 mitzvahs for every word, you get a mitzvah. There are 1%, less than 1% who will talk 200 to 215 or tops 230 words per minute. And those students, you can't understand them. You can't talk with them. Kabbalah kachpolte, the fast it goes in, the fast it goes out. You can't process so fast. But the average is, for an adult, once he become married, he comes down to her, she comes a little up to him. And they're adapting themselves one to each other. 150 is the average. By the way, I don't remember how it came in. What was your question? Oh, if I had to change myself.
And by the way, there must be a good joke when you said that they meet somewhere in the middle, but I don't know what the good joke is, but there has to be a good one when they get married. Eventually,
I will tell you.
You'll tell me the good joke.
No,
yeah.
I don't know the joke.
Yeah.
I can tell you just from experience, okay? The teenage boy will always talk more fast. The girls will talk a little slower because they're more empathic and they put in feelings into their words, so they talk a little slower. If she also talks like a bucher, and he's from the 200 words per minute. If they don't come down after the chasana, those couples are the couples we always say, zij fliehen, they are flying honeymoon. They didn't land it yet.
Right.
Do you know when they are landing? When he comes down to her, and she comes a little bit down, they're settling themselves 150. Now they can understand each other, they can process, they can absorb, they can remember. So I'm not going to label myself, I was talking 200 words per minute, but definitely 180. I came down to 150. And I feel that it makes your image, your personality, it makes you look, you're more established, you're stable, you are mature, you are professional. If I will talk 200 words per minute, as I can if I want, you wouldn't come to me. Right? I can talk fast.
Yeah.
I think Hashem made me to feel, to understand people who are struggling with fluency. Because I was such a fast speaker, by rewiring my brain to bring it down, today, if I try to talk fast, I may start to stutter. Meaning to say, I really feel after 2 years of sitting with teenagers and I had to slow down, I felt like my brain became wired. And if I want to go back, I will never be able so fluent. The reason how you can listen to me every day by davening mincha here next door, when I'm davening mincha so fast, not 180, not 200, but 250 words per minute, yeah?
It's fast.
It's fast. It's the fastest, yeah? It's only because I have the words in front of my eyes and I'm just repeating the same words from Kitabais. But if I need to come up with something, if you're going to ask me an open-ended question and I need to answer on spot, the only option, if I want to still talk fast, is if I will use interjections and fillers. I will explain it in Yiddish because it's also going to be very informative and very interesting for the people. Also, one of the things that I had to change. A teenager will use tons of garbage words, empty words to fill in, to win more time to process his message until he comes out with his message. Definitely, I'm talking now a little slower than in Yiddish because Yiddish is my native language, my mammolution, with what I grew up. So definitely because English is my second language, I will talk a little slower to be more careful to process my thoughts and to come up with the words. But more than this, as a role model, I need to be a model for them, not to use all these interjections and fillers. And I will go over in Yiddish because I think it's going to be more interesting. For the women, for the ladies, they will always use, especially the teenagers. So, whatever. I mean, what means so? Can you explain me what means so? What means whatever? My own daughter, my own children, listen to a conversation between teenage high school buggers, girls. Every 5 words is going to be so or whatever. What means these words? It means I'm not ready with my next words. I want to gain more time in a natural way to come up with my message. So I decided to throw words to fill in empty words in order to keep, part of social skills is turn taking. We take chances. So I want to keep the ball on my side. You shouldn't take over. But I didn't decide yet what to say. Meanwhile, I'm going to throw words in you, die krachen weg, bis ich decide aufzukommen mit my message, was ich sagen weiter. It's so unprofessional, it's so immature. So as long as you're doing what everybody is doing, this is why it's accepted. So there's an amount, how much garbage words, interjections, and fillers everybody's using. So as long as you're using the same amount of so whatever I mean, it's considered accepted. If you go over that number, I can share with you the number. But I want to first cover the men. They have their own words. They're not better. Don't worry. Hallo. Bekitzer. So ich trage, who cares what you're thinking? Shut your mouth, think your words, and when you're ready, open your mouth and say it. Why are you using all these words? For the same purpose. They're not ready with the message. They want to gain more time. So when I was treating stutters, especially teenagers, people think that stuttering is only when they are repeating the sound, the syllable, or the word, like I, or ich, or ich bin gegangen. There are a lot of kind of, if you don't want to call it stuttering, disfluency. The idea is the message doesn't go across from the speaker to the listener, but it becomes disrupted. It doesn't matter in which form. Or you're pausing, you're making a block, or you're repeating. But beside this, using interjections and fillers every time when you start your sentence, it's a form of stuttering. You're doing this the same reason of the real stutters who are stuttering and repeating the same syllable. You're not ready with your message. You can go back to this podcast, to this episode. If you can try to identify how much words I used, extra words, garbage words, interjections and fillers, you were also good. By the way, I'm giving you now feedback on the podcast, which is part of my job, to give feedback to my communication partner. But I had to adapt myself to be so careful not to use even one extra interjection and filler. Because when I was talking to this teenager and I tried to explain him something, hey, Cheskel, you just say yo, so, you just say So if I ever said they catched me, I was failing. So I had to change myself not only when talking to the clients in the room, but it became the norm by me. Rather pause, close your mouth, process your words, but when you say it, say straight to the point, the least amount of words, it should answer the question. When you're in a conversation, you're talking, especially in discourse, teenagers, empty conversations that doesn't say nothing, then you kannst nur Wasser, kannst schießen, stützen, melakschen, weil sitzt nicht für kein Ziel, just zu pushen Zeit, to cover the time. But when somebody asks you something, especially when you give a speech, by the way, you're asking what changed me. Today, it's very hard for me to listen to speakers who are not really prepared and they don't have the content ready. They bring in copies and they try to move faster and to repeat it more than one time until they come to the point. I think the same can be said in business also when it comes to salespeople, to communicate, to stand up at meetings, to speak up. Rather less, but to the point.
Two things come to my mind when you said all of that just now, which I loved. I'm going to listen back to this episode.
Just to finish, I saw that you became so excited and you wanted to know. What may decide if a person is not talking the right way? If every community has their own norms, what may decide what is a disorder? I'm not talking about a shina, raish, or stuttering or a specific. As long as you're doing what everybody is doing, it's considered accepted. Once you're doing the opposite, go out during the year with pajamas, with a shlof couple, a white yarmulke, what you're wearing at sleeping.
It's okay on Purim.
It's okay in Purim, but not during the year. Why? Where's the place in Sheikh Nur that said what is considered okay, what is tzinius or not? I'm fully covered when I'm with my nightgown with pajamas. Nobody will walk into the school with pajamas. Why? Who decided what's the norms? So the answer is, depends where you live, where you are. When you do what everybody is doing, this is considered the norms. If you do something that nobody is doing, it's the opposite. It's funny. It's wrong. So the more people will do it, the more it will be accepted. Up to 3% of a speech will people use all these interjections and fillers. So as long as you're using it's considered accepted. 3 to 5%, suggestion of the nerve. 5 to 8% is considered real stuttering because you're doing for the same reason of the people who are stuttering. Of course, it's not the same because they're stuttering because it's a miscoordination and they're not ready with the message. But you're also doing that not because of miscoordination in your brain, how it's wired, but you're not ready with your message. But it's so unprofessional. Tell me if the president at the State of the Union address will ever say so or and lahavdol, the Satmar Rebbe, by his State of the Community address, Kuf Aleph Kislev in the Armory building, when he speaks and he addressed 10,000 of people, if he will ever use the word or so. People doesn't like if you will always talk so correct. It's too formal. It's not natural. So up to 3% is considered accepted, but don't go over.
The two things that that immediately came to my mind were the first one was about doctors being the worst patients, or us setting the worst example, because you had mentioned how if you say they're on you for the hypocrisy that you did what you told someone not to do. And it's actually something that motivates me to be essentially as healthy as I possibly can as a physician, because I don't know why someone would take my word if I walk into the room and I look unkempt or like I'm not taking care of myself, which is easy because of the work hours and work-life balance that we all suffer from. It can be difficult, especially if you're trying to do many things. But I just don't know that my message would resonate with a patient if I come in looking like that. If I look like, specifically when I'm in the emergency department, if I look like I'm the next patient to have a heart attack or a stroke, I don't know why they would take my advice. And then as far as speaking and professionally speaking, I believe there's like this perfect middle ground, right? And I use it when I try and prepare for this podcast to be transparent. If I over-prepare and over-script, then all of a sudden I feel like I'm beholden to a very specific verbiage, a very specific wording that if I fall off track, it's almost like I'm the Baal Tefillah and I'm messing up, which happens all the time. So let's not get into that. Maybe you can help me with that off script. But
are you about tefillin? You sure?
No. I come from a line of chazanas, but
okay.
Unfortunately the gene is not strong with me, and my nerves to get the better of me. So,
I can give you some sessions.
We're gonna have some sessions, but so when you over prepare, you kind of can ruin the message. And the same thing if you under prepare, you just don't have the content for the message. So there's a perfect sweet spot of knowing what you want to say, not having the exact words predefined, and following up the words as subsequent to the message. Figure out what the message is and make the words around that. So both those things that you'd kind of mentioned, obviously resonate, because it's something that I can find in my daily life, either what I'm doing here or what I'm doing when I'm seeing patients. Because and what I'm realizing is that there's so much material here that this is not one podcast that we're meeting again, because I just think the way that you articulate is special, and when I'm entranced, I know that I believe the audience is going to be enthralled as well and very interested.
Thanks for the feedback.
You're welcome. But I do want to get to some core speech therapy information just to let the audience know really what speech is about, or at least in a nutshell, and then perhaps at a later point in time we come back and revisit some of the specifics that we're not going to get to just from a time constraint.
So people think that's...
I just by the way. Go ahead.
No, I want to show, I did remember what I said earlier, and I did it purposely, because I want to show for the audience, if you go from one segment to the other, from one topic to the other, you need to transition. You're giving over for me the mic. Now it's natural and it's okay to use so. But when you start a speech, you start a conversation, somebody asks you something for the first time, it's the first question, and you start with so, with this is what I meant. Going back to the podcast, when you asked me the first few questions, I didn't say I didn't say so. So being a role model, I wanted to show, don't feel offended that, you're not allowed to use so and No, as long as you're using it when everybody's using, to transition from one subject to the other, then it's accepted, like here.
And that just gave me a great idea, actually. Before I segue into what I was going to segue into, I'm kind of realizing now how much of speech, and I'm reflecting on, especially when I'm seeing patients or in the emergency department or in the acute care, if one does not listen correctly, digest information, and respond to what was stated, meaning if I template what I'm going to say before someone speaks, the classic, when you listen, you're silent, right? You rearrange the letters of listening to silent, right? So you really take in what someone's saying. That way, your speech is patterned after what they said. When you've already decided what you're going to say, that's not listening, and that's also not speech at the same time because it's not communication. And I think about, I'm so much more diligent about which words I'm using when I really listen to what someone is saying. If I've already decided what I'm going to say, it's almost inarticulate how it comes out. It's very, it lacks the true reflection of pausing and then using the words that I want to use to respond to what they're saying, if that makes sense.
Sure, and to add on what you say, that while the speaker talks, the listener talks to you, and you pause to process what you want to say, and it takes a while, some people may feel it's funny that I'm going to pause, it's going to take so long to answer. In fact, for you as a doctor, for us, for we, especially in public speaking, when somebody comes up on the podium to start a speech, the little tiny pause gives you the image like you are owning the audience, you are in control, and it builds up your power and your confidence by the time you start to talk. So it's the opposite. It's not funny that it takes time, you need to process, and as you said, it gives for your client to feel that, you're first processing what the client said, and then you're going to decide what to respond, and not that you were already with your message in your mind, you're just waiting for the patient to finish the words, but you anyway decided what to say. Much more professional.
You brought up a great point, and I'm throwing that script out today because I think that just responding off of what you're saying is enlightening. How much of speech is confidence, right? Because I know personally when I'm confident about what I'm saying, it comes out well. When I don't feel the confidence, right? And I'm wondering from a language growth, from kinder, from the youth to growing up, how much of our speech pattern is based off of confidence?
When you say speech pattern based on confidence, how people look on it, this is what you're asking? How people will judge?
How important is having, because you work with someone at correcting the mechanism. You say it this way, we need to change how we're manipulating with our mouth. Once again, I'm not the expert, but how much of that is the external manipulation, and how much is it sometimes you need to work with someone on, I can see that you can do this. It's a confidence issue, which I imagine is way more difficult to ascertain, but probably the case sometimes.
For example, here, I was already ready with my message. I just let you finish your words. But I was able to answer right away. I'm going to answer it from another angle, just to add as much as I can to this podcast, which I feel people will appreciate. Even although it's not public speaking, it's not a course on communication, but just to add this information. 47 to 93% of a person's message is not even the words what he says. They say that the words alone is only 7%. 47 to 93 is from the surrounding, which is the eye contact, how distance close you stand, the body language, the posture, facial expressions, the intonation, the inflection, the tone of volume, the pitch. All these words are part of the message. If you talk monotone, I don't want to show it, and I don't want to model here, and I don't want to say it in Yiddish to translate it, because this is not focused on public speaking, but just to answer what you said, just in short in English. If you talk monotone, it shows that you are low confident. You're not sure with your words. You are worried. You are nervous. When you use body language, you make it colorful with intonation, inflection, the rhythm of words. It adds color and it builds your confidence. More than all of this, to add something, a real therapeutic part, what we are using in the room, when I'm not sure with my words and I don't use the right body language, or I'm talking monotone, you will look back like confusing, like, is he sure with what he says? Does he know his message? Did I understand him correctly? So when you look at me so unsure, so confused, this is what will make me as the speaker more nervous, more anxious, that you're not with me. As a result, I will start to panic. I will become more anxious. And you will become more confused.
Negative feedback.
More negative. Part of communication is eye contact, is feedback. So I can see you like me, you understand me, you listen to me. If you're confused, I need to stop to give a chance for you to ask back for clarification. This is why eye contact is so important. Besides of the lip reading, so you can understand because you see how I'm talking, and besides of the rule in social skills, eye contact to connect with each other by heart, this is why eye contact is so important. So it's all about body language. If you use it, it will build your confidence, and people will give you feedback by looking to you with a calm, relaxed face, that they are with you, they are connected. If all this are missing when you're talking, not good. Therapy recommended.
How much of once again, every time you talk, I'm just.
But remember, we need to cover what speech is about, okay?
We will have to get to speech. That's definitely on the agenda here. It's going to be on part 2, I'm imagining, too. But we'll have to give a general. How much of that is what you do in the room with the patient? Meaning, you recognize that, yes, there's a speech component, but they're missing on all these other cues. How do you integrate that into your sessions, and how much of your session is dedicated to your speech is 70% of the way there, but your nonverbal cues are at 10%?
Me as the role model, as the clinician, I always need to be the right role model. Even if you didn't come for this, I need to be the right model, and I will always demonstrate it, no matter the age, the gender, the severity. But I never bring it into the discussion, into the session, unless they came for that. Or they're asking, Cheskel, what do you think can I improve myself? Because if they come for voice, for swallowing, for language, not communication, social skills, but language concepts, if they come for career, if they come for a speech sound, why should I make them aware for something else and, to make them feel like I'm here to label as much diagnosis as I can when they didn't come for it? Especially some people, they are shy, introverts, and they want to stay the way they are. This is who they are. They don't want to be more social, more accepted, and more open. So I will never mention it unless I feel the client is going to appreciate it. I know he's a magachir, he's a popular student, he's a famous person, he's a salesman, he's a kolelingaman, he learns with Bucharam. Then I will, after treating, and by the time I'm ready to discharge, then I will add him, I think you may enhance yourself to improve with this and this.
I think we're going to have to call this episode 1, Getting to Learn About Mr. Jacobowitz. And we're going to have to label episode 2, Everything You Need to Know About Speech. You're allowed to label things like that. I said before we started that I like to speak as nuanced as possible, but when you try and catch people on your podcast title, you have to say everything, otherwise no one's interested in the title. But I thank you for coming in today, because once again, the point of this podcast is get to know the person taking care of you. And I didn't know we went to the same school, so now we're alumni and we can come in wearing the same swagger, the same clothing to represent.
Not with me, by the way.
Not with you. Yeah, I think it was a joke.
All the logos and the pens and the keychains, and then stay connected. Once I finished,
it's all thrown out.
Everything. I'm a Hasidic man, a Satmar man, a father of children, who's also doing therapy to help people at Taras HaKodesh. It's not my identity. It's not I'm a therapist, but I'm also from the community. I'm a Hasidic man doing speech. So all these fancy logos, believe it or not, when I was graduating, another person would go with a ship, would go for vacation, will make a party, you can't imagine. I came home after the state exam. If you can imagine what it means, a state exam, going over the hell. I came home right away. I went back to my office in the school in the Morset like nothing. I gave L'chaim and my minion the next morning kippelach with a little bronfen bottle, and people ask me why. I told them I went through some difficult doors, and I feel like, to thank Hashem by giving for people to make a bracha. I didn't even tell them. It was like, it's not my identity, it's not coming to my house. There's no hint in Q, no zeicher of a father of a speech therapist, not the textbooks, not the work. It's so separate, the house from the work. It never come together. People will never come to my house. I will never take them in. People may call home, but, they will direct them back. The only people are at Sula who may call Shabbos or come to pick me up when it's a real emergency, post-hospital swallowing issues in the community. They, during COVID, they picked me up in the shul in the middle of Davening, but that's it. Come into my room, no lab coat, no diploma on the wall, nothing. It's like a fun school, like a cheder. That's it.
And he's modest too, people. I appreciate you coming in. I've learned a lot about you, and I think that's going to help springboard our next discussion where we get to actually discuss speech and swallow, because we haven't even fully defined what your role is. But I think just from an educational perspective, the amount of information that came out of this first podcast, I'm going to go back and listen to it, because the way that you speak about the topic is so in-depth and so thoughtful that even without touching the topic itself or defining it, I think we've made some serious headway. So I appreciate you coming in today.
And I want to finish by giving you feedback. I can really notice on you a difference from when you started to how you finished. You came down a little at the end, because this is how speech work, communication. One drives the other partner in the conversation. You were talking a tiny faster than me because English is your first native language. I went a little slower. By the time at the end, you came down a little. And you were much more careful about interjections and fillers at the end after mentioning it. And you did use a little more body language since I brought it up.
It warmed up in here, so I was able to move around a little bit more.
Good job. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Thank you for coming in.
Thank you.